dying man's confession.
I have never given up until now. But now I have given up. I'm going to die. I made up my mind last night that it must be, and very soon, too. You say you are going to revisit your river, by and by, when you find the opportunity. Very well. That, together with a certain strange experience which fell to my lot last night, determines me to tell you my history. For you will see Napoleon, Arkansas, and for my sake you will stop there, and do a certain thing for me, a thing which you will willingly undertake after you shall have heard my narrative. Let us shorten the story wherever we can, for it will need it, being long. You already know how I came to go to America, and how I came to settle in that lonely region in the South. But you do not know that I had a wife. My wife was young, beautiful, loving, and oh, so divinely good and blameless and gentle, and our little girl was her mother in miniature. It was the happiest of happy households. One night, it was toward the close of the war, I woke up out of a sodden lethargy, found myself bound and gagged, and the air tainted with chloroform. I saw two men in the room, and one was saying to the other in a hoarse whisper, "I told her I would, if she made a noise, and as for the child—" The other man interrupted in a low, half-crying voice, "You said we'd only gag them and rob them, not hurt them, or I wouldn't have come." "Shut up your whining. Had to change the plan when they waked up. You done all you could to protect them, now let that satisfy you. Come, help rummage." Both men were masked and wore coarse, ragged clothes. They had a bull's-eye lantern. By its light I noticed that the gentler robber had no thumb on his right hand. They rummaged around my poor cabin for a moment. The head bandit then said in his stage whisper, "It's a waste of time. He shall tell where it's hid. Undo his gag and revive him up." The other said, "All right, provided no clubbing. No clubbing it is, then, provided he keeps still." They approached me. Just then there was a sound outside. A sound of voices and trampling hoofs. The robbers held their breath and listened. Sounds came slowly, nearer and nearer. Then came a shout. "Hello, the house! Show a light! We want water!" "The captain's force, by God!" said the stage-whispering ruffian. Both robbers fled by way of the back door, shutting off their bull's-eye as they ran. The strangers shouted several times more, then rode by. There seemed to be a dozen of the horses, and I heard nothing more. I struggled, but could not free myself from my bonds. I tried to speak, but the gag was effective. I could not make a sound. I listened for my wife's voice and my child's, listened long and intently, but no sound came from the other end of the room where their bed was. Their silence became more and more awful, more and more ominous, every moment. Could you have endured an hour of it, do you think? Pity me, then, who had to endure 3 hours. It was 3 ages. Whenever the clock struck, it seemed as if years had gone by since I heard it last. All this time I was struggling with my bonds, and at last, about dawn, I got myself free and rose up and stretched my stiff limbs. I was able to distinguish details pretty well. The floor was littered with things thrown there by the robbers during their search for my savings. The first object that caught my particular attention was a document of mine, which I had seen the rougher of the two ruffians glance at and then cast away. It had blood on it. I staggered to the other end of the room. Oh, poor, unoffended, helpless ones. There they lay, their troubles ended, mine begun. Did I appeal to the law? I? Does it quench the pauper's thirst if the king drink for him? Oh, no, no, no. I wanted no impertinent interference from the law. Laws and the gallows could not pay the debt that was owing to me. Let the laws leave the matter in my hands, and have no fears. I would find the debtor and collect the debt. How accomplish this, do you say? How accomplish it, and feel so sure about it, when I had neither seen the robbers' faces, nor heard their natural voices, nor had any idea who they might be? Nevertheless, I was sure, quite confident. I had a clue which you would not have valued, a clue which would not have greatly helped even a detective, since he would lack the secret of how to apply it. I shall come to that presently, you shall see. Let us go on now, taking things in their due order. There was one circumstance which gave me a slant in a definite direction to begin with. Those two robbers were manifestly soldiers in tramp disguise, and not new to military service, but old in it. Regulars, perhaps. They did not acquire their soldierly attitude, gestures, carriage in a day, nor a month, nor yet in a year. So I thought, but said nothing. And one of them had said, "The captain's voice, by God!" The one whose life I would have. 2 miles away, several regiments were in camp, and 2 companies of U.S. cavalry. When I learned that Captain Blakely of Company C had passed our way that night with an escort, I said nothing, but in that company I resolved to seek my man. In conversation I studiously and persistently described the robbers as tramps, camp followers, and among this class the people made useless search, none suspecting the soldiers but me. Working patiently by night in my desolated home, I made a disguise for myself out of various odds and ends of clothing. In the nearest village I bought a pair of blue goggles. By and by, when the military camp broke up, and Company C was ordered 100 miles north to Napoleon, I secreted my small hoard of money in my belt, and took my departure in the night. When Company C arrived in Napoleon, I was already there. Yes, I was there, with a new trade. Fortune-teller. Not to seem partial, I made friends and told fortunes among all the companies garrisoned there, but I gave Company C the great bulk of my attentions. I made myself limitlessly obliging to these particular men. They could ask me no favor, put upon me no risk, which I would decline. I became the willing butt of their jokes. This perfected my popularity. I became a favorite. I early found a private who lacked a thumb. What a joy it was to me! And when I found that he alone of all the company had lost a thumb, my last misgiving vanished. I was sure I was on the right track. This man's name was Kruger, a German. There were 9 Germans in the company. I watched to see who might be his intimates, but he seemed to have no especial intimates. But I was his intimate, and I took care to make the intimacy grow. Sometimes I so hungered for my revenge that I could hardly restrain myself from going on my knees and begging him to point out the man who had murdered my wife and child. But I managed to bridle my tongue. I bided my time and went on telling fortunes as opportunity offered. My apparatus was simple, a little red paint and a bit of white paper. I painted the ball of my client's thumb, took a print of it on the paper, studied it that night, and revealed his fortune to him next day. What was my idea in this nonsense? It was this. When I was a youth, I knew an old Frenchman who had been a prison keeper for 30 years, and he told me that there was one thing about a person which never changed from the cradle to the grave, the lines in the ball of the thumb. And he said that these lines were never exactly alike in the thumbs of any 2 human beings. In these days, we photograph the new criminal, and hang his picture in the rogues gallery for future reference. But that Frenchman, in his day, used to take a print of the ball of a new prisoner's thumb and put that away for future reference. He always said that pictures were no good. Future disguises could make them useless. The thumb's the only sure thing, said he. You can't disguise it. And he used to prove his theory, too, on my friends and acquaintances. It always succeeded. I went on telling fortunes. Every night I shut myself in, all alone, and studied the day's thumbprints with a magnifying glass. Imagine the devouring eagerness with which I pored over those mazy red spirals, with that document by my side which bore the right-hand thumb and finger marks of that unknown murderer, printed with the dearest blood, to me, that was ever shed on this earth. And many a time I had to repeat the same old disappointing remark. Well, they never correspond. But my reward came at last. It was the print of the thumb of the 43rd man of Company C whom I had experimented on, Private Franz Adler. An hour before, I did not know the murderer's name, or voice, or figure, or face, or nationality, but now I knew all these things. I believed I might feel sure, the Frenchman's repeated demonstrations being so good a warranty. Still, there was a way to make sure. I had an impression of Kruger's left thumb. In the morning I took him aside when he was off duty, and when we were out of sight and hearing of witnesses, I said impressively, "A part of your fortune is so grave that I thought it would be better for you if I did not tell you in public. You and another man, whose fortune I was studying last night, Private Adler, have been murdering a woman and a child. You are being dogged. Within 5 days, both of you will be assassinated." He dropped on his knees, frightened out of his wits, and for 5 minutes he kept pouring out the same set of words, like a demented person, and in the same half-crying way which was one of my memories of that murderous night in my cabin. "I didn't do it. Upon my soul, I didn't do it. And I tried to keep him from doing it. I did, as God is my witness. He did it alone." This was all I wanted, and I tried to get rid of the fool. But no, he clung to me, imploring me to save him from the assassin. He said, "I have money, $10,000 hid away, the fruit of loot and thievery. Save me. Tell me what to do, and you shall have it, every penny. 2/3 of it is my cousin Adler's, but you can take it all. We hid it when we first came here, but I hid it in a new place yesterday and have not told him. Shall not tell him. I was going to desert and get away with it all. It is gold and too heavy to carry when one is running and dodging, but a woman who has been gone over to the river 2 days to prepare for my way from me is going to follow me with it. And if I got no chance to describe the hiding place to her, I was going to slip my silver watch into her hand, or send it to her, and she would understand. There's a piece of paper in the back of the case which tells all. Here, take the watch. Tell me what to do." He was trying to press his watch upon me, and was exposing the paper and explaining it to me, when Adler appeared on the scene. About a dozen yards away, I said to poor Kruger, "Put up your watch. I don't want it. You shan't come to any harm. Go now. I must tell Adler his fortune. Presently I will tell you how to escape the assassin. Meantime I shall have to examine your thumb mark again. Say nothing to Adler about this thing. Say nothing to anybody." He went away filled with fright and gratitude, poor devil. I told Adler a long fortune, purposely so long that I could not finish it. Promised to come to him on guard that night and tell him the really important part of it, the tragical part of it, I said, so must be out of the reach of eavesdroppers. They always kept a picket watch outside the town, mere discipline and ceremony, no occasion for it, no enemy around. Toward midnight I set out, equipped with a countersign, and picked my way toward the lonely region where Adler was to keep his watch. It was so dark that I stumbled right on a dim figure almost before I could get out a protecting word. The sentinel hailed, and I answered, both at the same moment. I added, "It's only me, the fortune-teller." Then I slipped to the poor devil's side, and without a word I drove my dirk into his heart. "Jawohl," laughed I. It was the tragedy part of his fortune indeed. As he fell from his horse, he clutched at me, and my blue goggles remained in his hand, and away plunged the beast, dragging him with his foot in the stirrup. I fled through the woods, and made good my escape, leaving the accusing goggles behind me in the dead man's hands. This was 15 or 16 years ago. Since then I have wandered aimlessly about the earth, sometimes at work, sometimes idle, sometimes with money, sometimes with none, but always tired of life and wishing it was done, for my mission here was finished with the act of that night, and the only pleasure, solace, satisfaction I had in all those tedious years was in the daily reflection, I have killed him. 4 years ago, my health began to fail. I had wandered into Munich in my purposeless way. Being out of money, I sought work and got it. Did my duty faithfully about a year, and was then given the berth of night watchman yonder in that dead house which you visited lately. The place suited my mood. I liked it. I liked being with the dead. Liked being alone with them. I used to wander among those rigid corpses, and peer into their austere faces by the hour. The later the time, the more impressive it was. I preferred the late time. Sometimes I turned the lights low. This gave perspective, you see, and the imagination could play. Always the dim, receding ranks of the dead inspired one with weird and fascinating fancies. 2 years ago, I had been there a year then, I was sitting all alone in the watchroom, one gusty winter's night, chilled, numb, comfortless, drowsing gradually into unconsciousness, the sobbing of the wind and the slamming of distant shutters falling fainter and fainter upon my dulling ear each moment, when sharp and suddenly the dead bell rang out a blood-curdling alarm over my head. The shock of it nearly paralyzed me, for it was the first time I had ever heard it. I gathered myself together and flew to the corpse room. About midway down the outside rank, a shrouded figure was sitting upright, wagging its head slowly from one side to the other, a grisly spectacle. Its side was towards me. I hurried to it and peered into its face. Heavens, it was Adler! Can you divine what my first thought was? Put into words, it was this. It seems, then, you escaped me once. There will be a different result this time. Evidently this creature was suffering unimaginable terrors. Think what it must have been to wake up in the midst of that voiceless hush and look out over that grim congregation of the dead. What gratitude shone in his skinny white face when he saw a living form before him, and how the fervency of this mute gratitude was augmented when his eyes fell upon the life-giving cordials which I carried in my hands. Then imagine the horror which came into his pinched face when I put the cordials behind me and said mockingly, "Speak up, Franz Adler. Call upon these dead. Doubtless they will listen and have pity, but here there is none else that will." He tried to speak, but that part of the shroud which bound his jaws held firm and would not let him. He tried to lift imploring hands, but they were crossed upon his breast and tied. I said, "Shout, Franz Adler! Make the sleepers in the distant streets hear you and bring help. Shout, and lose no time, for there is little to lose. What, you cannot? That is a pity. But it is no matter. It does not always bring help. When you and your cousin murdered a helpless woman and child in a cabin in Arkansas, my wife it was, and my child. They shrieked for help, you remember, but it did no good. You remember that it did no good. Is it not so? Your teeth chatter? Then why cannot you shout? Loosen the bandages with your hands. Then you can. Ah, I see. Your hands are tied. They cannot aid you. How strangely things repeat themselves after long years. For my hands were tied that night, you remember? Yes, tied much as yours are now. How odd that is. I could not pull free. It did not occur to you to untie me. It does not occur to me to untie you. Shh! There's a late footstep. It's coming this way. Hark, how near it is. One can count the footfalls. 1, 2, 3. There. It is just outside. Now is the time. Shout, man, shout! It is the one sole chance between you and eternity. Ah, you see you have delayed too long. It is gone by. There, it is dying out. It is gone. Think of it. Reflect upon it. You have heard a human footstep for the last time. How curious it must be to listen to so common a sound as that, and know that one will never hear the fellow to it again. Oh, my friend, the agony in that shrouded face was ecstasy to see. I thought of a new torture and applied it, assisting myself with a trifle of lying invention. That poor Kruger tried to save my wife and child, and I did him a grateful good turn for it when the time came. I persuaded him to rob you, and I and a woman helped him to desert, and got him away in safety. A look as of surprise and triumph shone out dimly through the anguish in my victim's face. I was disturbed, disquieted. I said, "What then? Didn't he escape?" A negative shake of the head. "No? What happened then?" The satisfaction in the shrouded face was still plainer. The man tried to mumble out some words, could not succeed, tried to express something with his obstructed hands, failed, paused a moment, then feebly tilted his head in a meaning way toward the corpse that lay nearest him. "Dead?" I asked. "Failed to escape? Caught in the act and shot?" Negative shake of the head. "How then?" Again the man tried to do something with his hands. I watched closely, but could not guess the intent. I bent over and watched still more intently. He had twisted a thumb around and was weakly punching at his breast with it. "Ah! Stabbed, do you mean?" Affirmative nod, accompanied by a spectral smile of such peculiar devilishness that it struck an awakening light through my dull brain, and I cried, "Did I stab him, mistaking him for you? For that stroke was meant for none but you." The affirmative nod of the re-dying rascal was as joyous as his failing strength was able to put into its expression. Oh, miserable, miserable me, to slaughter the pitying soul that stood a friend to my darlings when they were helpless, and would have saved them if he could. Miserable, oh, miserable, miserable me! I fancied I heard the muffled gurgle of a mocking laugh. I took my face out of my hands and saw my enemy sinking back upon his inclined board. He was a satisfactory long time dying. He had a wonderful vitality, an astonishing constitution. Yes, he was a pleasant long time at it. I got a chair and a newspaper, sat down by him and read. Occasionally I took a sip of brandy. This was necessary on account of the cold, but I did it partly because I saw that along at first, whenever I reached for the bottle, he thought I was going to give him some. I read aloud, mainly imaginary accounts of people snatched from the grave's threshold and restored to life and vigor by a few spoonfuls of liquor and a warm bath. Yes, he had a long, hard death of it. 3 hours and 6 minutes from the time he rang his bell. It is believed that in all these 18 years that have elapsed since the institution of the corpse watch, no shrouded occupant of the Bavarian dead house has ever rung its bell. Well, it is a harmless belief. Let it stand at that. The chill of that death room had penetrated my bones. It revived and fastened upon me the disease which had been afflicting me, but which, up to that night, had been steadily disappearing. That man murdered my wife and my child, and in 3 days hence he will have added me to his list. No matter. Oh, how delicious the memory of it! I caught him escaping from his grave and thrust him back into it. After that night I was confined to my bed for a week, but as soon as I could get about, I went to the dead house books and got the number of the house which Adler had died in. A wretched lodging-house it was. It was my idea that he would naturally have gotten hold of Kruger's effects, being his cousin, and I wanted to get Kruger's watch if I could. But while I was sick, Adler's things had been sold and scattered, all except a few old letters and some odds and ends of no value. However, through those letters, I traced out a son of Kruger's, the only relative left. He is a man of 30 now, a shoemaker by trade, and living at number 14 Königstrasse, Mannheim, widower with several small children. Without explaining to him why, I have furnished 2/3 of his support ever since. Now, as to that watch. See how strangely things happen. I traced it around and about Germany for more than a year, at considerable cost in money and vexation, and at last I got it. Got it, and was unspeakably glad. Opened it, and found nothing in it. Well, I might have known that that bit of paper was not going to stay there all this time. Of course I gave up that $10,000 then, gave it up and dropped it out of my mind, and most sorrowfully, for I had wanted it for Kruger's son. Last night, when I consented at last that I must die, I began to make ready. I proceeded to burn all useless papers, and sure enough, from a batch of Adler's, not previously examined with thoroughness, out dropped that long-desired scrap. I recognized it in a moment. Here it is, I will translate it. Brick livery stable, stone foundation, middle of town, corner of Orleans and Market. Corner toward courthouse. 3rd stone, 4th row. Stick notice there, saying how many are to come. There, take it, and preserve it." Kruger explained that that stone was removable, and that it was in the north wall of the foundation, 4th row from the top, and 3rd stone from the west. The money is secreted behind it. He said the closing sentence was a blind, to mislead in case the paper should fall into wrong hands. It probably performed that office for Adler. Now I want to beg that when you make your intended journey down the river, you will hunt out that hidden money and send it to Adam Kruger, care of the Mannheim address which I have mentioned. It will make a rich man of him, and I shall sleep the sounder in my grave for knowing that I have done what I could for the son of the man who tried to save my wife and child. Albeit my hand ignorantly struck him down, whereas the impulse of my heart would have been to shield and serve him.